I have some of my family coming for Easter Sunday lunch, and to make things very simple, I'm going to be heavily relying on the oven to do all the work. What is going to be required of me is just a little bit of work at the beginning, a little bit of work at the end, and on the menu there will be my slow roasted shoulder of lamb with my ever so simple potato and turnip dauphinoise. And to go alongside then I'll be blanching some sugar snaps and green beans so they're full on crunchy still. And for dessert it's my Black Forest Pavlova, which is very simple and I can get on with a day ahead, and then it's just an assembly job on the day itself. And I'll also be showing you my hot cross bun recipe, which is a little bit different from the traditional. And as always, you'll find all these recipes in the description box below. I have 6 egg whites here, which I have just separated from the yolks, and the yolks I freeze for a later date for some delicious custard, creme brulee, or floating islands perhaps. I'm just going to whip these egg whites up until frothy, soft peaks. Okay, the meringue is now at soft peaks stage. So you can see it's billowed up and it's time to start adding the sugar. So again, just on a medium speed. Add your sugar 1 tablespoon at a time. Give it a few seconds between each spoonful. And it's 375 grams of sugar. The last of my sugar I can shake in there now. I'm going to increase the speed just for the last moment. So this has reached firm peak stage, and now I'm ready to get on with some of the other elements to make this a pavlova. 2 teaspoons of corn flour and the same of white wine vinegar. What this does is it makes the shell crisp up, but the interior stay a soft, tender, marshmallowy consistency. A teaspoon of vanilla extract, and this is what turns my perfectly white pavlova into the Black Forest Pavlova. 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder. And we'll just give this a quick whir together on a fairly low setting. That's the chocolate all incorporated. I'm going to use this as well. Dab the 4 corners of your baking sheet with the meringue mixture left on the paddle. Then we can lay on our baking parchment, and this helps it stick to the tray. Spoon it out onto your baking sheet. We just want to sort of try our best to form this into a fat disc.
We got a message for you, and we want to make it heard. Heart and soul.
I'll switch to a palette knife to smooth it out. could keep working on this, but I have to stop at some point. So this just needs to go now into a 150-degree oven for 1 hour. Then I switch the oven off and I use a wooden spoon just to keep the oven door slightly ajar and let it cool for at least another hour or until completely cool in the switched off oven. Can't have a Black Forest Pavlova without a cherry element, and my cherry element is coming in the form of, well, I use the word loosely, a cherry curd. It's not really a proper cherry curd in that it doesn't actually have egg yolks and that in it. It's just a soft sauce really. And I'm using 200 grams of frozen dark sweet cherries. 75 grams of castor sugar. I want the zest and juice of a lemon. Just gonna squeeze that over, hoping that I don't get any pips. This is what's going to really thicken it up. A tablespoon of corn flour. And last but not least, 250 mils of cold water. Just give that all a stir together. Just give this an occasional stir until it has thickened. So I'm just going to pour this off into a jug. Blitz with a stick blender. And this can just sit until cooled. Then I'll cover it and refrigerate it. And tomorrow then, after lunch, it's simply a matter of assembling my Pavlova. My slow cooked shoulder of lamb's really simple to make. It does take quite a while, but doesn't take much work. Simply chop a couple of carrots and a couple of onions. And drop into the base of a roasting tin along with a couple of bay leaves and a few cloves of garlic unpeeled. Mince 3 cloves of garlic into a small bowl. Two teaspoons of dried thyme, a generous amount of sea salt, a little coarse black pepper. Strip the needles off a sprig of rosemary and chop finely. Add this into our bowl. Along with a good glug of olive oil and stir together. Time for the lamb. And this is the star of the show. This is a shoulder of lamb. It's not quite as lean as a leg of lamb, but with the slow cooking, the collagen will break down. And what you'll get is a piece of meat so tender that it can almost just be shredded with a couple of forks if wanted. I just want to make a few little stabs in the meat just to help all this herb and garlic make its way down into the meat. Pour this mixture over the meat and just rub that in, trying to push it down into those slashes. And don't forget to get the underside. Add a splash of water around the outside. This just helps with the gravy. Cover with foil. To make things really quick and simple, I've simply sliced my potato and turnip in a food processor with a slicing blade attachment attached. And now I can evenly disperse these throughout a buttered roasting tin. I have 500 mils of full fat milk here, which I am combining with 250 mils of double cream, and season this as well. And over with the remainder of the milk and cream. Dot this with little knobs of butter. Final scattering of salt. And this now can just go into the oven to cook underneath my lamb. You can now discard the vegetables from the roasting tin. Allow the meat to sit for anywhere from 20 minutes up to an hour to rest, and at that point you can get on with making your gravy. I'm also serving alongside some crunchy green beans and sugar snaps that I'm just going to blanch, then toss in some butter and scatter with some Maldon salt. Add a teaspoon of honey. Sometimes the gravy can be quite bitter, and that little bit of honey just brings balance. "500 mils of beef stock. And then I have 2 tablespoons of corn flour that I have mixed with 3 tablespoons of water. And just stir this into the gravy. This is what will make it thick. This is quite an unusual ingredient for gravy, but it does add quite a bit of flavour, and it enhances the colour whilst adding flavour. So a little bit of dark soy sauce, only a teaspoon or thereabouts. Give that another stir. Pour the gravy through a strainer. It's going to go into my gravy boat now.
Did you ever stop and think, why spend too much time just getting ready? Let me be honest, I don't know a single thing that I haven't done to make you notice me. Let me be real here. When I see you, my heart starts racing, but I don't know if I like this chasing and playing and waiting around. It's a shame that my hands start shaking all of the time when you're around me.
We've had our lunch, so now time for pudding. I have 300 mils here of double cream, and I'm just going to whip that until it's softly whipped. And spread most of the cherry curd over the base of the pavlova. cream whipped. Now, this just needs to be piled on top of the cherry curd. I like it very softly whipped. So it just about holds its shape. And last but not least, I have 50 grams of dark chocolate that I've chopped very finely with a knife, and I'm just going to scatter that over. Okay, that's it. Time for pudding. Hot cross buns aren't very difficult to make, but they do take quite some time. And my hot cross buns are an all-inclusive bun, and what I mean by that is I make 12 buns, 6 in the traditional fashion studded with an excessive amount of sultanas, and the other 6 are for those that aren't a fan of the traditional bun, and these are instead studded with chocolate chips, and you can use dark chocolate chips, you can use milk chocolate chips, you can use whatever chocolate chips you like. Okay, so what I have here for my hot cross buns is I have 500 grams of plain flour, 75 grams of caster sugar, then we want some spices, so we have some ground cinnamon, some fresh nutmeg, you can also use dried if you prefer, and some ground clove, not too much of that, the zest of a lemon, 1 sachet or 7 grams of dried yeast, 1 egg. We've already mentioned our sultanas and chocolate chips. Then we need 50 grams of unsalted butter, a teaspoon of salt, 300 mils of milk, and that is it for the base ingredients for the hot cross buns. We do need a couple of other things, a little bit of golden syrup to glaze with, and some water and plain flour just to make our crosses on the bun, but we'll get to that later on. So first things first, I want to get a pan on over a low heat. I simply just want to warm my milk, and again that's 300 mils of milk, and melt my butter together. I don't want this to be hot. As soon as the butter has melted into the milk, I'm going to switch off the heat and allow it to cool. We're waiting on that. I'm going to get on with the dry ingredients. So simply tip the flour into the bowl of a KitchenAid, along with the sugar, a teaspoon of fine sea salt, and if you happen to be using salted butter, you might want to leave out the salt altogether, or cut that back to maybe quarter a teaspoon. I want a teaspoon of cinnamon, and much less of the ground cloves. Too much of that and you'll think you're at the dentist. grate in about a quarter of a nutmeg. You can use dried nutmeg if you haven't got fresh. And we'll just give that a little whirl together. And I'm going to add my dried yeast as well. I want 2.5 teaspoons, that would be 7 grams, or if you're using a sachet, 1 sachet of dried yeast, that is. And I'll pour that back into the jug just to help it cool quicker. I want to zest a lemon into the milk and butter mixture. Just keep moving your lemon. You don't want to get too much of the bitter pith in there. Nothing quite gets me salivating as much as the smell from a freshly zested lemon. We got most of it into the jug anyways. Okay. And then just give that a little stir together. And I want to crack in 1 egg. And just whisk that together. Okay. So what is very important is that this is barely warm to the touch. It just needs to be lukewarm. And it is. Pour that in. And just let this whir away for 8 to 10 minutes until all the flour is incorporated and the dough begins to clump around the dough hook. Okay, flour your work surface. And then we just want to turn this sticky dough out onto the counter. Get rid of that hook. It smells incredible already. I'm not going to weigh it out or anything, but I'm just going to sort of eye it and split it in half. Okay, stretch out the first half. And to this, I'm going to add my sultanas. I'm just going to pour them over and knead them in. Cover with cling film. And that's that part done. Just add a little more flour to my counter. And work the second bit of dough. So exactly the same process, just rattle out all the chocolate chips. And knead them in. I did say it wasn't an excessive amount of sultanas and chocolate chips. No point being stingy. And that's it. Dough number 2 is ready. So these just need to sit now for an hour, and whilst I'm waiting on the dough to prove and to double in size, I'm going to get on with a little bit of cleaning up.
'Cause I love you, baby. I can't let you go, baby. I gotta tell you that I've been looking.
When the dough has doubled in size, turn it out onto a lightly floured work surface. Knead briefly, then return to its bowl and leave it to double in size once again. For a final time, turn the dough out onto a floured work surface. Roll into a fat sausage and divide into 6 equal parts. Using a cupped hand, roll the dough ball until it forms a smooth ball, then place 3 of each dough, spaced a little apart on the lined trays. Cover with some oiled cling film to prevent it sticking and allow to sit for 45 minutes until almost doubled again in size. To make the crosses, mix 3 tablespoons of flour and 3 tablespoons of water together to form a smooth paste. Pipe crosses on each bun, then transfer to a 200-degree oven, that would be a 180-degree fan, for 15 to 17 minutes. Whilst the buns are still warm, brush with a little golden syrup that has been warmed to make it a little more spreadable.